what other 30-year-old black girl has
Right.
got cancer?
Right.
That was the first thing I thought.
And what are some of the long-term fears? Do you feel like you're still dealing with those now?
I got told I had to have chemotherapy, so the first thing as a black woman, what would you do? Am I going to lose my hair?
Right. I was
literally
just about to
ask.
ask. No, but this is the kind of information that people really need to know, right?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the To My Sisters podcast. I'm Renee.
I'm Courtney,
And I'm Leanne.
and we are your online sisters and hosts of today's episode of the To My Sisters podcast.
Yes.
We are going to be
Third wheeling.
It's like, I feel like this is so intimate. Like,
as you can tell, we have a beautiful guest with us today, the one and the only Leanne. Woo! Commotion.
Drum roll.
Such an honor to be here with you, ladies.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you for being here. Today's episode is all about something which some people find uncomfortable,
Yeah,
but something we all need to talk about,
Absolutely.
sisters,
Yeah.
which is breast cancer.
absolutely.
We're going to be raising awareness around not only your story and what you do, the incredible work you do, but also us, our health, especially as Black women, especially within our culture and our communities, our awareness of breast cancer, its symptoms, the journey, how we can support each other through community. It's going to be a really, really good conversation. So Leanne, please introduce yourself.
Yeah,
to
sure.
us.
Well, what an honor to be here. I'm excited to be speaking to you girls today.
Our honor.
So, as I said, my name's Leanne. I am 38 years old and I had breast cancer at 30 years old. 6 months after my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time.
Whoa.
So I just got her through it and then boom, I found a lump. So yeah, so I 7 years cancer free officially. I used my experience to set up my own charity, Black Women Rising, which turned 5 in March. And I'm a social entrepreneur. That's what I do. It's what I've always done for the last sort of 24 years, set up charities and social enterprises. So I use that experience to set up a charity to help Black women in the community and empower them through their cancer diagnosis.
Wow. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. Amazing. Right?
All the words, all the adjectives.
So take us back. To obviously you are a 30-year-old woman, right? And like you mentioned, your mum had been diagnosed. This is the second time she had been diagnosed with cancer. What was life like before your own diagnosis? Because I think it's easy to be defined as like the incredible work that you do and the fact that you've survived breast cancer, which is amazing. But you were someone before this whole experience happened, right? And shaped you. So take us back to Leanne before this diagnosis.
Well, do you know what, Courtney? That's such an important question to ask because I always talk about not wanting to be defined by my diagnosis because I think people just see me a lot as that girl that went through cancer. And actually, I had a whole life before cancer. I had run a dance company for 15 years before my diagnosis. So at the time I was diagnosed, I just celebrated my company's 15-year anniversary. You know, I'd been running a dance company in the community. It's a social enterprise, you know, and I was going through almost like a bit of a life transition. I was in my, it was in my 30th year. I got my diagnosis just before my 31st birthday. So that year of 30s, I was enjoying life and living and holiday. When I found my lump, I was in Ibiza partying, like
Leanne has to put us on some game.
Honestly,
living it up.
I was living and I was like, do you know, I'd been through actually a lot for a 30-year-old, I had been through quite a lot of trauma in my teenage years. I'd been through depression. I'd went through a really bad breakup. And for the last 3 years of my 20s, I was living. Like holidaying, really getting to know myself. I'd written a book even.
Wow.
Let's not even talk about that book. I'd written and self-published a book. I was really living for me. So I also was in the best shape of my life.
Come on now.
Because I had finished teaching dance sort of a few years prior to that. I was in the gym. I was kind of getting fit on my own terms. I was going through detoxing. I discovered like just how to take care of myself holistically. And I was really happy.
Yeah.
So it came as not just a huge shock that my mum was going through it. And it was great because my mum did chemo the first time she had it.
Yeah.
The second time when I nursed her through, she didn't actually have to have chemo. So it was, she had other treatment, but it was a beautiful thing for me to be able to be by her side. I was living with her at the time.
Okay.
There was this kind of like, you know, mother-daughter kind of get through this together type of thing.
Yeah.
So to then me go through it 6 months after, I just think it just takes me back to the shock. That was a shock. And you know what the worst thing was? I was dismissed by the doctors.
Okay.
Twice.
Okay.
Well.
So unpack that.
Yeah.
Why was there so much shock? Because you've described things, you're taking care of your health, you're nursing your mum through this. What was the shocking element to it all?
What other 30-year-old black girl has
Right.
got cancer?
Right.
That was the first thing I thought. A fit, healthy black girl at that. That was a huge thing. And I guess because I had been dismissed by the doctors, I was accused of being paranoid because my mum had had cancer. I got told, oh, you know, hormonal lumps and stuff. And it was on that last attempt, as a third time lucky, that my massagist, like I said, I was going through this holistic journey, and the lady that used to, you know, sort of mentor me through it, found a lump on my breast. Found the lump on my breast, and she said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it's just I think it's just a hormonal thing." And she went, "When did you find that?" And I was like, "I was on holiday, and they just told me it was nothing when I got back." She said, Go to your doctors tomorrow, and if you do not go, I will come and drive to you and take you myself. And I ended up going because she was so adamant. And it was only there that it was a female doctor, and she said, "No, I don't like the feel of this. I'm going to send you."
Jeez.
So that was, yeah. I always say to her, "I owe you my life," because I wouldn't have taken it seriously.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't have.
Wow.
Thank goodness that you had somebody to advocate for you in that position.
Yeah, of course.
And I think something that you've touched on that is so visceral and real to a lot of women in our community, especially coming from an ethnic minority background,
Absolutely.
being a black woman, is the well-documented neglects we can often experience at the hands of our healthcare providers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you've kind of spoken a little bit about your experience kind of around your diagnosis, but thinking about your experience more broadly with cancer and engaging with healthcare more generally, how do you feel that being a black woman kind of colored your experiences? How did it affect the way that you were taken care of? How did it affect the way that you even kind of saw yourself during that time?
I think first and foremost, it's really important to touch on when you get a diagnosis of cancer, at that point, you don't see anyone. You see what's in front of you in terms of this diagnosis. And the first thing you're going to ask yourself, I think, as a woman of color or someone of a minority who may not have experienced anything like cancer before or known of cancer before in their communities or whatever, you're going to think, am I the only one? And then when you walk out that waiting room or whatever that surgery or wherever that is that you get that diagnosis, what you feel is you want to go, actually, is there anyone else in this room, or is there anyone else that looks like me who's also going through that? And I remember that being one of my first thoughts as I walked out of there. All the leaflets I'd seen, anything that I'd seen, there was no one young black that looked like me. And then after that, you then have to start unpacking the questions. How comes I've got this? What the hell is going on? Why? You know, there's a lot of whys. And that's funny because obviously where I had this experience with my mum, I was experienced with cancer.
Right.
I knew the steps. I knew the processes. I even knew what the checking of the cancer was going to be like. Imagine if you do not know any of that, what that experience is like for you. So in a way, I was already prepared and had the knowledge. Not only that, in my hospital by then, I had the familiarity of the doctors and nurses because obviously they knew my mum.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, where I became an advocate for other women was because of what I saw how others were treated. So not necessarily in my own experience. It was like the first example of this was when I was on the ward, on the chemo ward, and I overheard 3 nurses talking about one of the black women on the ward, calling her difficult. Now, I knew this woman because I'd got chatting to her. She wasn't difficult. She'd actually been told that she had cancer, and she'd never had cancer, wasn't in her family or whatever. She was in her 30s. She had a child, was having a really tough time with her diagnosis and her support network. And she was being labelled as difficult.
Goodness.
And I thought, nah, there's a real big disconnect here. And then for me, what I then noticed was that a lot of the women that were coming into the chemo ward, I would go in the chemo ward and I would have like 3 people with me. You were allowed to bring people at that time.
Yeah.
I would notice a lot of the women of colour were on their own. And as they started getting me buddying up with some of the women on the ward. And as I was going around the ward, it was the things those women were telling me. So one of the women was told by one of the nurses, I don't know what you're doing here because black people don't usually get cancer.
Wow.
And that was by one of the nurses. Yeah. One of the nurses that came around with like some of the teas and coffees and stuff. That's what she was told.
No, stop.
Yeah. And then other women that were saying they weren't, no one in their family knew they had cancer.
Wow.
They weren't. There was another girl that I met, and she was told by her parents to go back to where she caught the cancer from because she didn't get it from them.
Stop it.
So then what I started to realize very early in those days was there was a huge disconnect with 2 parts.
Right.
The medical profession and then the community.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that then, because obviously the whole reason why we really wanted to have this conversation within our community is a lot of us are women of color.
Absolutely.
And coming from very diverse backgrounds, and growing up like in my childhood, cancer was something you saw on TV, and it was known as like a white woman's disease.
Exactly.
So it was kind of like,
Hello.
you know, people back home don't go, we might have diabetes, hypertension, we know that stuff, high blood pressure and all that.
But the C words.
But the C cancer,
no.
that's what they get in the West.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So that whole like go back to where you got it because you didn't get it from us. And yet there are actually a lot of, people who are going through cancer, maybe in, the African countries within the diaspora, and it's usually also associated with moving to the UK or moving to the US,
Absolutely.
right? So why do you feel like within our communities there is that kind of like cancer, like there's a lot of, I wouldn't even say a lack of education, just a lack of awareness around it. Why do you think that is?
I think deeply ingrained in African and Caribbean communities, there is a lot of myths and taboos about illness. There's this kind of really unhelpful, and I say, sort of stigmas around what illness, long-term sickness is, and also the remedies to cure those sicknesses. Let's unpack this. A lot within our communities is deeply ingrained in religion. These diseases are not of God. Where did you get them from? It's a curse for things you've done in the past. I mean, I could sit here and list every single thing I've been told by these women, right? And a lot of it is deeply ingrained in religion, and then when lumps and bumps and things are found, don't go and get them checked out because God will cure you.
Pray.
So, God will cure you of these. There's a lot of things about these diseases coming from the Western world. That these diseases are of white people. It's one of the first things I was told was, I don't know why you've got cancer. Black people don't get cancer. That's what I was told by my community.
As a black person who has cancer, right?
What do I do with this information that you told me?
So this is it. And then, then there's a lot of blame and shame because that's what it is with a lot of these illnesses, become a blame and shame game. But I will hand on my heart say, a lot of this is to do with fear.
Mm.
A lot of these myths and taboos come from fear. I understand, particularly in a place like the UK, a lot of people are scared to come forward when they find out signs and symptoms of cancer because of the some of the experiences they've had within the hospitals and the, you know, with the medical profession. Let's be honest with you, a lot of people have suffered at the hands of a lot of medical professionals. We know that. We know that there's a mistrust. We know all of that. But again, like I say, what I really, really need the community to understand is that there is a lot of really, really unhelpful belief systems and patterns that are deeply ingrained in our communities that are not true around cancer. At the moment, Black women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with late-stage cancer than white women in this country. And that really is why I do the work that I do. Now, why is that statistic there? Okay, we can talk about, you know, the failure from the medical system. We can do all that. And we're getting there and we're unpacking all of that. But let's really get into why are we not going forward when we're getting letters to go for screenings? I mean, this is obviously if you're at the screening age. But what about as younger women, when we're finding lumps and bumps, how do we advocate for ourselves? Are we getting the right support? Are there organizations out there that you can help you identify the vital signs and symptoms? Why have I still got young girls in their 20s coming in to Black Women Rising and saying they were not listened to? And this is a huge thing. You know, I've done my own research because lots of people said, oh, you've got no research to verify why you exist. So I did my own research with 100 women, and it was called the 100 Women Survey. And I did this in lockdown, and 46% of women, so 46 of those women were not believed when they presented their symptoms to the doctors. You know, and this is the stuff that we have to go through. But I do believe if we want change out there, it's got to start with us as well. And the first thing that we've got to understand is that we do get these diseases. One of the amazing things I got to do last year is I got to go to Ghana. Yes, I got to go to Ghana, and I got to spend 8 days there with 3 different organizations, right? And it was the most rewarding piece of work I've done. And it was going into these organizations, and you know what I met young women who have never traveled outside of Ghana with or had breast cancer. And they were talking about why, you know, a lot of women have come in at late stage. They were talking about some of the issues that they face. And their issues, fair enough, they didn't necessarily have the medical bias. A lot of their issues is around access to cancer care. But a lot of the issues were the same when it came to a lot of the myths and taboos and stigmas. It's huge. Religion playing a massive aspect, not being believed, banished from their homes. I met women that husbands have left them because of cancer and then remarried them when they've survived.
You're joking.
I'm not joking. No, I'm not.
Not that man coming back and saying, well, to this house.
No, okay. The woman actually stood up and she's like, my husband left and then he came back. And everyone was like, wait. And I was like, no,
you kicked that man to the
car through the door, front door.
But you know, I understand things are different. But, you know, this is what I'm saying. This is this is like the meat on the bones of why the work is so important and the raising awareness is important. And most of those girls I met hundreds of women going through cancer. And most of those women I met were women under 40.
Jeez.
So then how did this affect your relationships with like family and maybe romantic partners? Like how did your diagnosis and going through your treatment impact all of that? Like your relationship with community?
It was huge because I guess from one side I had to stop working, and my work at the time was a massive thing because obviously I run communities, I run dance programs and all this sort of stuff. And I remember I went into hiding. I was in so much shock after my diagnosis. I immediately went into this state of shock that I was like, I don't want any other young girl to ever go through this, because I would say I was like ill, quite mentally ill, with just trying to process why, but also not having any proper relation or role models or anybody to say, you're going to be fine and you're going to survive this and you're going to be amazing. There was none of that. My mum is old school. She deals with things very different than I do. I could not relate to her when I was going through it. So there was really no one I could relate to. But what I also noticed was people within my community, there are some friends that I have never spoken to since that day I got diagnosed.
Goodness.
Because they just did not even bother to come round.
Get out.
People just, I always say, if you want to see who your real friends are, have something like this come along, because it shows you don't even know in that moment, because I didn't know. Of course, people know now when they're diagnosed, you're a bit more clued up as to if it's a cancer, you're going to, get through fine or not. But for me at that point, because I was in such a frantic state, I was like, I'm going to, I honestly thought I was going to lose my life. And just seeing how people that I had constantly given to and sown seeds into not even pick up a phone or text because they didn't want to deal with it and their own selfish reasons was absolutely heartbreaking for me. And so there was only a few people I could rely on at the time when I was going through my diagnosis. At the time when I was diagnosed as well, I was single and I had been dating. I was dating, and I remember there was a couple of guys at the time I was talking to. Two of them actually just disappeared off the face of the earth.
You know what? Yeah, this podcast, the way men
honestly,
get a bad rap.
I know.
Honestly,
I can't deny that. I cannot. I wish I could say lovely things, but I couldn't. I wish I could say lovely things.
Men of the community, we need you guys to stand up.
Arise.
Because it seems like you're all aligned.
Black women are rising. Black men arise.
Yes.
Please arise.
We need the equivalent. We need the equivalent.
Okay, this one you're going to laugh at. So the other one I was talking to, he was a bit more like consistent and make sure I was okay. And then he came out of a comment and that made me go, no. And he said his brother was a pharmacist, trained as a doctor. I don't know, but anyway. And he goes, I was talking to my dad about breast cancer. And he said if we had kids, they wouldn't catch it.
Catch.
God.
Like a ball.
Because it's the flu.
Yeah.
Because it is the flu.
And I just was like, okay, this education thing is really important.
Right.
Because
ignorance.
It's ignorance and you don't even have an absolute clue, So that was that. And I guess what I would say to that was the loss of self in that moment was really hard, because if you don't even have the proper support network, I know a lot of people found it really hard when I got cancer, like a lot of my siblings and stuff, they really struggled with that. But I guess there's a difference between struggling and showing the person who's actually going through it that you're there as well, and that goes across the board. And I realized very quickly that I was going to come out this diagnosis and really get to know who my support network was. And that was really clear.
Yeah.
Were there any good examples?
There were some amazing examples. Okay. And there was these 3 people, and I literally used to call them my angels. And they were really, really just so supportive. And it was the people that you least expected to step up were the ones that stepped up. Yeah.
Often happens that way.
It really does. That's so really I guess that whole that whole experience with those 3 just stepping up, I guess what that really did to me was allow me to use that now as a tool, just to understand that it is really important to grow your network and your people. And it's great to have the same people you have around you all the time, but be open to meeting other new people as well, because you don't know what value they'll add to your life in so many different other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
That taught me that, because these 3 people who I didn't know, like, they weren't in my immediate circle. They became my immediate circle and just showed up. And if it wasn't for those 3, I don't think I could have got through it.
Wow. Thank goodness you were able to get through it. And thank goodness for them, because it's experiences like that will really show you the people that are important for you. But speaking about you and your experience going from this relatively active 30-year-old woman, you're at the cusp of life and now faced with this very real reality of a cancer diagnosis and the experience. Talk us through what that felt like. How did your life change? How did your sense of self transform, if it did? How did you work through and process this very real reality and experience of having cancer?
Really, really lovely question, because I think it is important for people to know that your world is ripped apart you know, you're not, you know, that moment I was told, you know, I had cancer, I was never the same person again. And I know we're going to get into it. I'm not going to lie, I'm a much better person now for it. But at the time, you kind of know my life will never be the same again. And I remember where I was in that waiting room and everything. When I knew I had that, I was like, my life is never going to be the same again. And then I got obviously told I had to have chemotherapy. Bearing in mind, chemotherapy isn't used all the time anymore. So if someone gets diagnosed with breast cancer, a lot of the time you don't actually have to have chemo. Okay. No. If you get diagnosed with breast cancer now, you don't always have to have, you know, chemotherapy, which a lot of people always like, you know, there's other treatments and other things that you can do. But I got told I had to have chemotherapy. So the first thing as a Black woman, what would you do? Am I going to lose my hair?
Right. I was just about to ask. I said, because your hair's looking luscious today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of the little bit of growth in the last 7 years. You can't see,
she's got a really nice bun in the back. She's got hang time, some length.
She got some highlights as well. Like, hello.
Giving.
Listen.
So, you know, yeah, I didn't even ask if I was going to lose my hair. She told me. She was like, you do have to have chemotherapy, Leanne. And she said it to me. She said, unfortunately for you, you have to have chemotherapy.
Not unfortunately for you.
And she said, so you're more than likely going to lose your hair. And you're going to be on treatment for about 6 to 8 months. So I would say, you know, take a year off if you can. And I was like, what?
Wait, so she's hitting you with all of this just as soon as you were diagnosed? It was
something at the same time. And at the same time, I was also told cancer will stop your periods and we can't always guarantee that your periods will come back. So we have an option for you because of your age if you want to have egg preservation.
Wow.
So this is all in one meeting and you have to take it all in.
No, but this is the kind of information that people really need to know, right?
Yeah. But it's just a lot to take in. Like, you've just found out you have cancer. Now they're telling you chemotherapy, and then there's all the racing thoughts about that. And then it's like, okay, will I be able to have kids? Freeze my eggs? All at one time.
And also now as well, you know, back in the days when my mum had cancer before, when you had breast cancer, there was only one sort of operation, which was a full mastectomy, which take off the breast. Now there is other options. So you could do a lumpectomy where they just take out the lump and preserve the breast and all that sort of stuff. But I was told I had a few lumps and that I had to have a mastectomy. And then not only that, they were like, because your mum has had it twice, and because of your age, we think you should have both of them off. So then that was all in this one appointment. And it was like, whoa. I did not know how I drove home that day.
I was about to say, how did you not lose your mind?
I had to go and have a blood test as well. And I remember leaving and I was so dead quiet. And I told my brother, tell everybody at home what's going on. And I walked through that door of my mum's and I just collapsed. Collapsed on the floor. And I said, I remember my words. I said, I've been through many things, but I can't do this. I've been through a lot in my 30 years of life. I've been through a lot, but I cannot do this. That's what I said. And everyone's like, you will. And I just, for about, I would say 4 weeks, I just couldn't see past that black hole.
Jeez.
And then you start the treatment and then that's another journey in itself.
So after they've hit you with all of this stuff, and you go home, you collapse. I too would have maybe died.
Maybe just and not arisen.
What happened? You know, how did you begin that journey, and what did the journey look like of overcoming?
It's funny because I can say this now because I've spoken to so many other girls who tell me the same thing. Getting to chemo, to that first chemo, right? Having in the morning just walked to the hospital with my mum because I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to walk again for the next 6 months. I'm, you know, saying goodbye to my room and everything. And I was like, not saying that I was like my room was going to go anywhere or anything, but it was like, when I return, things are going to be really different. It was that kind of like goodbye process. Like, even to the people that I had around me, I was just like, look, I'll talk to you as soon as I can, you know, because you just automatically think chemo is going to just kind of like take everything away and you're going to be like really sick. And guys, it's not like that.
Okay. Do tell.
Okay.
Do tell. Let's get into it.
So first and foremost, chemo for me was really, really tough going through the treatment, but it was where I started to feel more level-headed. I guess it's because there was no unknown. It was that you're going to go through chemo. Well, let's focus on the treatment. Yeah. And that was that. You have a lot of team around you. You've got your doctors, your nurses. They're making sure you're okay throughout. And the chemo ward was the nicest place. Wow. I met so many people, conversations. This is when friends and family would come. It wasn't a bad thing. And I reacted quite well to the chemo in a sense that I wasn't entirely sick. And I guess that was a shock for me. But now I've met so many other women who have not been made ill by the drugs. Yeah. So it means that the drugs and things are getting better for people and people are coping more well on treatment and things are improving. But what did happen to me in my first round of treatment was I did lose my hair straight away. So that was the first thing to go. And I remember it was the most terrifying experience. Waking up one morning and hair gone or anything like that is the most terrifying thing. And that's what happened. It just came out chunk by chunk and I screamed. Wow. Absolutely traumatized. I sobbed for days until one day I went to my hairdressers, took a couple of friends and family and we shaved the whole thing off. But I tell you what, as soon as I did shave it off, I felt so liberated. I was like, this is the one thing I'm taking back control of. And I feel in control. And I look good bald. Like
I can tell.
Man. I look good bald. I loved it.
For it.
Thank
got
you.
A good face, everything.
Oh. And so, but I was like, do you know what? I said, I don't mind my bald head going, but not my eyebrows and my lashes. But they soon followed. Oh no! But you know what? I got good at the drawing the eyebrows on, and I got good at putting my lashes on. Those were skills for life at that time. And you know what? I just rocked wigs. I really just kind of like started turning up to chemo, feeling a bit more like myself, and using this as like a time of self-discovery. And I guess what I am trying to say is it was like I lost and found myself during chemo. And it was that I obviously had this year off. I give thanks for having the year off because not many people could afford to have the year off. But thankfully I was running my own company. The work job I had at the time was really supportive. It was almost like this gift of, I don't know, I think maybe that was like my little gift for all the community give back that I'd been doing for the 15 years. I was like, I'm able to take this year off. Yeah. For the first time, I discovered like Netflix. I never used to watch TV. I was always working. I was always that girl working over TV, chilling, rest. But this real period of self-discovery was happening. And you know what I really, really went through was this period of, and I'll never forget where it was. It was halfway through my treatment. And I remember sitting there and I was like, I caught a cold. And when you get a cold and you're on treatment, it's not a nice thing. And I remember by that time, the steroids had really kicked in. I had a puffy face. I'd put on 2 stone by then as well. My hair had gone. My periods had stopped. And they were already assessing my body about removing both of these breasts. And I remember saying, I don't even feel like a human, let alone a woman. And I felt so down and I just couldn't get past that feeling of feeling like, how would I ever be the same person again? I couldn't look at old pictures of myself. I couldn't imagine my future. I couldn't imagine a way out of there. And I just hit that rock bottom. And what I would say is that at that time where I had to just dig deep, I got myself into church. Like my faith really, really pulled me through that. Having that faith. Thankfully, a really good friend of mine started taking me to a church. They started praying for me. And I'm not going to lie, I started feeling the difference straight away. Wow. And I wasn't one of those people. I believed in God. I've always believed in God, but I never went to church. And that really helped. But also from my own perspective, I just started, I guess, my own sort of daily spiritual practices to get me through digging deep. You know, I've always been a reader. I've always been one of those people that's into like gratitude and all of those things and affirmations. And I really started to just try and love myself through it and forgive myself, because, you know, I realized as well about our community that there's a lot of blame and shame. And I got all these people messaging me when they started to find out, oh, take this potion and take this juice, eat this fruit, drink this tea.
My mum loves that. I can't lie. I have to stop. The concoctions, the lemon, the ginger,
Yeah,
that combo,
all sorts of stuff.
that combo.
Yeah, all of that. The combos.
So then when you
The combos.
What? Especially during
Combinations.
COVID.
Oh no, COVID, that was deep.
The COVID ones, the
COVID
onions, the
combo.
garlic,
Yeah,
the ginger, everything mixed together.
Yeah.
Our community really showed, guys, this is not, we have modern medicine.
I know.
But talk about that, like the forgiving yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Just having to really dig deep. And that was real tough for me, because I think actually with all the stuff I'd gone through in my life started to come back at that moment. And I was like, oh God, this is not just cancer. This is bringing up other stuff, other unresolved trauma. And because you're sitting there and you're just doing the thinking, right?
Yeah.
And what I look back on now, and I guess what I'm learning working with all these women, because, you know, we work with over 500 women now, is actually most women have said what happened to me happened to them. And do you know what that is? This beautiful process of almost shedding all the skin and then rebirth. And you don't know it because you're in that funk at the time, but it's after. It is the after when you start realizing, actually, I learned the most about life when I was going through that treatment.
Yeah.
When I had that diagnosis, I learned the most about life than I ever did. And for me, what I realized is around society's pressures on what make us a woman. I didn't have anything at that time. You know, I was about to lose my breasts, and who knew what sort of outcome the reconstruction was going to be. There was this whole thing about, you know, just kind of having no hair and all these things that I'd always held in such high regard, let alone thinking, how am I going to find a life partner? How am I going to have children? I never went for the fertility thing. I wasn't an option because of how mentally ill I was with the shock and anxiety. They were like, we can't put her through that. So I didn't preserve my eggs. So there was so much digging deep I had to do. And that, I would say, has sort of governed me into who I am now.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
Insane. Like, just thank you so much for your transparency and just how enlightening this has been, because I think you often hear of these stories or these experiences as something that happens to somebody far away. But having the opportunity to really hear the reality of the experience and how it changes you as a person, not just the illness or the diagnosis, but how it actually changes you as a person is so important to share. And I think actually continuing in that thread, we can often think of cancer or long-term illnesses or kind of health conditions as something that ends once you go into remission, right? Once you've overcome, right? You've closed the door, you're now supposedly free, right? What does life actually look like for you after that point, right? So you've gone into remission, things are looking up. What's the reality of living a life post?
Yeah, I mean, that is an amazing question, because I think that's where a lot of women who go through cancer struggle as well, is this thing of when the doctors and the nurses and stuff go away, what does life look like for you then?
Right.
And like I said, you know, I went through this kind of process of evolution without actually knowing it until months, if not years after. So actually when chemo did stop, and when I had my operation stopped, when I got told I was in remission, you know, and then I remember asking, okay, what's next? He's like, well, no, you know, we're going to continue to see you and stuff, but it won't be, you know, and it's like, okay, so all the doctors and nurses are going away. Now what happens here?
Yeah.
And that is a real big sort of, I'm not going to swear, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, it's a big mind thing, because you have to really go, who am I? I'm not that same person. Okay, so I'm due back in work in a couple of months.
You're just
How am I going to go to work? I'm still struggling with the after effects of this treatment.
Yeah.
I'm still tired. I'm still fatigued. Mate, I've still got 2 stone extra on. You know?
Yeah.
My hair still hasn't grown back. My lashes, but like, I'm not ready to go to the big wide world yet. And then everyone around you is like, you're better now. You start seeing people going away. You're better now. You got life to look forward to. And you're like, I can't even see my life. Not only that, I am so scared that this could happen again. This fear, because as you start meeting people, you hear about cancers coming back and people being
it happened to your
told.
mum, right?
Right.
It did. So you're like, this could happen again. What do I do? I'm 30 years old. I've not married yet. I've not found my life partner yet. I've not had children yet. I've not And that worry 7 years on is still very much there, but the voice is quieter now. But at the beginning, that is the biggest struggle. The biggest struggle for anybody that's going through cancer, who's in primary cancer, that we say, is this going to come back? Because that really provides a lot of fear. And to be honest, as I've said this whole time, this is why Black Women Rising was so important to set up, because we needed a space away from, first and foremost, other races and other races and ethnicities, so that we could have some familiar ground to talk about stuff what's going on in our households,
right,
and relate to. But also to provide a sisterhood that we weren't getting outside of that. Family, friends, partners, great, whatever. But there is no other support network than people who are going through it themselves. And it's this unspoken thing where you start talking about stuff and they're like, yeah, it happens to me too. And you're like, oh my God, really? Yes. I've met somebody that's going through this and I don't have to explain what this is. And that could be staying up all night because you've been on, certain treatments that keep you up for 3 days straight. And so you've got your buddy there that you can text throughout the night because you're both going to be up. I had a buddy that was that. We provided so much comfort to each other. So there's so much in the sisterhood, which, you girls have both created this huge network of that. This is exactly what Black Women Rising has done. It created a network of women who can come together in familiar circumstances, which is probably going through the toughest time of their life, but find that comfort in having each other. Because that recovery journey is hard. It's really hard and it's never ending. I say to people, it never ends. It's a beautiful thing. It's been eye-opening. Gosh, it has. And I am definitely not the same person I was before. I'm not going to lie. I'm better. I live such a better life now. My meaning of life and everything else that's in it has changed completely. I live my life to the full. I grab onto every moment. I give thanks for every moment. I just am such a better person for it. But it has been difficult.
What have been some of the big difficulties, especially being in remission? Like you described, you're getting told you're in remission and then the doctors and the nurses go. Did you kind of lose people who had been key parts of that healing journey? And what are some of the long-term fears? Do you feel like you're still dealing with those now, 7 years on?
I would say, and I don't want to get emotional, but definitely I've lost a lot of people. I don't want to cry. I've lost a lot of people who were on my journey with me. That's been the hardest. I think one of the hardest things for me as well was, and I still struggle. I don't want to ruin my makeup. No, sorry, I love my makeup. I got something to go afterwards. But do you know what was really hard? It's been really, really hard for me is really sort of the mind, really thinking that I was going to die, the reoccurring thoughts of death. That's something plagued me. It's just constantly never thinking about the future, never thinking, let me live for now. And this could be, right, guys, something crazy like, you know, I would justify going like on a wild shopping spree because I would be like, well, I'm not going to be here by the time I'm 40, so I might as well spend. You know, it was, I might as well do this and I might as well do that, and not thinking for the future. And it's robbed so much of my recovery journey. The worry that the cancer was going to come back, the worry that I wouldn't see my 40s, the worry that, you know, I wouldn't have children, or, you know, that was a huge thing for me. It was a huge thing for such a long time for me. So, yeah, I would say those are the toughest parts that I've had to deal with. And I guess when you're the face of an organization, you're the face and the spokesperson for Black women going through cancer a lot of the time, you know, because when I started talking about it, there wasn't many Black women talking about cancer at the time. And you have to hide all of that because you're trying to advocate for people who are not. So yes, you can be transparent to a certain degree, but then when you've got women who rely on you, and really I took that as a serious role, that a lot of these young girls or women, you know, older than me, whatever, were looking up to me as a safe space, as an example that I'm going to get through this, I'm going to be okay. And so I hid a lot of my own demons with the cancer journey because I didn't want others to get disheartened on their own journey.
It's a big burden.
It's a huge burden that I put on myself. No one ever said it to me, like, don't show. It was just how I dealt with it.
Let's get you a tissue.
Thank you. Listen, I'm actually a crybaby, you know, honestly. I'm surprised I never cried sooner, but yeah.
Oh, no. Thank you for your honesty.
No, of course.
Yeah. So talk to us about prevention and us as a community. Like, what do we need to be aware of? Because as much as we can also talk, about prevention and stuff, there are women who are probably currently going through this, have been through it. What do we as a community of women need to be aware of more when it comes to breast cancer?
I would say it's twofold. And I think first and foremost, everyone needs to make sure that you are checking your breasts on a regular basis. We did so much work on, you know, how to check your breasts. You can check online, any of our pages or any of our resources that we have online. There's so many resources anyway, how to check your breasts. They're everywhere. And it shows you a really good step-by-step routine of how to check your breasts in the shower, in the bath, you know, working around the collarbone, into the armpit and around the chest. And my biggest thing is if in doubt, get it checked out. I had previously, a few years before that, found lumps in my breast. And every time I did, because of the awareness of my mum, I always went to the doctors and they felt that my breasts for me. And yes, you may get a man that might check your breasts, but he will always bring another female into the room. Always.
Necessary.
So I always say, if in doubt, get checked out. Every time. And I would also say, as women of colour, advocate for yourself. Push. There is this new thing. It's not new. It's been in place for a few years now. When you are really worried about a lump or a bump in your breast, they now have a 2-week system where you have to get fast-tracked to the hospital.
Wow, that's good.
So this is something that's been, or someone has to contact you from the hospital to book an appointment in. This has been a game changer for a lot of people. So now you've got to advocate for yourself, push. And if you really still feel and they try and dismiss you off, say, I want to be seen at the hospital, just for the peace of mind. Done. You know? And again, you've got organizations like us, Black Women Rising, that will help you if you need any help advocating for yourself. Like, this is what we encourage people to do. This is the first thing. The second thing is that if people invite you for a screening, now the screenings are of a certain age, you know, usually women, I think it's the 50 upwards. But the other thing is that if cancer is in your family, which we are now meeting more and more young girls where cancer has been prevalent in their family,
Yeah.
where their mums have had cancer, their aunties have had cancer. And so the families have been put on screening programs. So that means that a lot of the younger generation of the family can go for regular screenings as well. Not a lot of people know this. If your mum's had breast cancer or people in your family have had cancer, you can now put yourself forward for screening as a family. So that is really important.
That's good.
So me having cancer, my mum having cancer, my sisters get regularly checked. So, but it's not something that they will tell you to do all the time. They may mention it. You've got to advocate for it, and you've got to push yourself first. Look at how stretched our NHS system is.
Yeah.
You've got to advocate for yourself. It is not their responsibility to tell you to go and get checked out all the time. Even the screening letters, you push yourself and get yourself checked out, but also do the checking, you know?
How often should you be checking, like at home?
They say once a month.
Okay.
You know, I check on a regular basis, but once a month, stick it into the calendar. We always say the first of every month. This is what we encourage everyone to do. You know, you've got your first of every month, and you can get checked, and put that as a reminder in your phone, as you would a reminder anywhere else in your calendars. Stick that in your phone and just use that as a point to check.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked a bit about kind of communities, individuals, how we can make a difference in terms of, you know, understanding diagnosis, checking ourselves out. But I think one thing that's so beautiful about your story is the advocacy work that you do, right? You're a social entrepreneur. You've had conversations and you've been in spaces where you've been able to advocate to institutions on behalf of these women that often don't have a voice. So on the part of our healthcare, on the part of the government, on the part of the institutions, how can they better support communities? How can they better support Black women, women of color, within the healthcare more broadly, but around this specific issue? Like, what would you say to them that you haven't already said, or things that you have said that just need to be amplified? What is the message that you would have to these institutions or these broader organizations, healthcare spaces that really need to support Black women?
Learn about our experiences as Black women. Because as I always say to everybody, that may make that experience of when we go into a room and we are diagnosed with cancer, make them understand about some of the things that we will have to face that will be different from our white counterparts. So stigma from family, the fact that cancer may be the first time that cancer has ever been mentioned to us. Or we're, or even knowing someone with cancer. Like, for me, learning about our experiences is key. Learning about our history, as being women of color in this country. And that includes the racial experiences that we have been through, which will make sense to why we have a distrust against the medical institutions, and it's about learning. And what I will say to you on that is that there is an amazing piece of work that I am part of, which is addressing that.
You better talk that talk.
So I don't think I can talk about it too much because it's like
not the drop. Not the drop
so
here.
Sorry.
Hello.
But you know what? After 5-6 years of talking and going to meetings and being practically fed up, to be honest with you, and
big facts.
Talking, I went to spoke at an amazing event in Parliament in the beginning of the year. And you never know who's in the room and whatever, but let me tell you something, there was the right people in the room.
Come on.
And they are very, very keen to work on something around educating healthcare professionals around our experiences and our care and what the barriers are for us accessing the right support that we need mentally and physically, but also why our experiences will differ from our white counterparts. Simple as that. There's so much to be done and there's so much learning. Another thing is if people are wanting to know about our experiences, what we did a couple of years back in lockdown was we created a magazine, and it's the Black Women Rising magazine. And what that magazine was twofold. It was, number one, a magazine with stories, inspiring stories. It's a glossy magazine. We did photo shoots and whatever, addressing some of the things I spoke about earlier today, which was about wanting to be inspired through your journey of cancer, seeing representation, seeing the faces, seeing people that look like you. So it addresses that. It addresses the community at large with education about cancer. what things to say and not to say when someone in your family's been diagnosed with cancer, because that's important.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, as a whole, the magazine is just a beautiful, I would say, resource piece for the medical professions, medical healthcare professionals that need to learn about our experiences. And I'll be honest with you, it's got to the point now on our website where we ask people, are you a patient, or are you a healthcare professional? Because we are realizing that magazine is just flying off the shelves to healthcare professionals. People say that this is where I've learned so much from. So that is something that's widely available for people to learn. But learning is key. It's the only way we're going to improve the outcomes that are so dire within our community.
Yeah,
necessary.
absolutely.
So necessary. And I guess on the other side of that as well, as a community, right, how can we support each other when somebody finds out, you know, they have breast cancer? We're a community of women. You described there are people who are part of this journey who, without it, you couldn't have gone through it. And I think there are people who may never go through it, but they'll know someone who will. And they may not know how to support, be there, what to say. So what would you say sisterhood looks like? What should the sisters do for their sisters who may be going through this?
Be there and be present, you know, and there's quite a lot of things I'd like to say on this, because I feel like being there for people is not always doing talking. Yeah, it's not always the talk. It's showing up when others are not. It's knocking on doors and it's saying, listen, I'm just popping up with a bag of shopping. I'm just popping up to show you that I'm here. It's phoning someone and just saying, look, I'm here to hold space. If you need to discuss anything, I'm here to watch a movie on the television, actively doing that. I remember I had a friend, no longer in my life anymore, but used to text me in the morning on her way to work and say, I'm just checking in. And I remember it used to annoy me because I was like, I don't hear from you any other time except when you're on your bus journey going into work every morning. And that showed me that you've just kind of fitted me into your diary, and like it's a convenience to you rather than it is anything to me. Yeah. And then I had these amazing friends that used to literally just pop up, drop a little cake off, drop this off, and be like, do you know what? I'm just popping off some stuff here. And you know what were the best qualities about a lot of these friends? They didn't do the shame game and the blame game, which we do too much in our community. This is the biggest no-no. Don't try and dissect why someone got their cancer. Don't be sending them recipes on health stuff and how to be a bit more healthy. And don't tell them how to, eat their food. Don't tell them what drink they should put in their mouth. Don't tell them what to do, because that is one of the main reasons why we get people coming through our doors, is they are told and spoken at and told what to do. They're told why they got their cancer. You got your cancer because of all the bad things you've done in the past. You got your cancer because I've been seeing you eating white people's food. Yeah. Oh no. Uh-oh. You've been working too hard. You're too stressed. I told you that working too hard was going to be like that.
And now it's your fault.
I got that a lot. Business. You've been running that business since you were young. You never gave yourself time to grow and learn. And it's like, mate. And those were the people I stayed away from. And that as a community, don't do that.
This blame and shame game. That's crazy.
That's terrible.
Well, we have learnt. Keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth
mind
shut.
your
And
business.
show up at that front door with some groceries.
That's what...
Big facts.
That is basically it. Hold space. Yeah. Hold space. Let that person talk, do, be whatever they want to be, because you won't know unless you've been through it yourself what is going through that person's mind. And a lot of the time, those thoughts are dark. Yeah. And especially at the beginning stages of when you had your diagnosis, you don't actually know what your treatment plan is. You don't even know what type of properly cancer you have, because there's so many different types of breast cancer. Right. So there's a lot of testing, a lot of seeing what's going on. That period of not knowing where you actually stand is the hardest. That's why I say the 4 weeks was the hardest.
Yeah.
When I got on the drugs and chemo, I was cool. I was a bit more level-headed because I kind of knew. But that not knowing and wondering, it's a dark, lonely, hard place. So that is the time where everyone is seeing who's around them and who's not. I've met women, and obviously as I had my emotional moment, right? I've met women who have been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And that's terminal cancer. So that's, they're told ultimately, you're going to lose your life to this. And so the words and the wisdom from these women it's given me sort of goosebumps even thinking about some of the things I've learned from these women. But what I've really found with these women is they always got to this point where they continued to always live their life because they found acceptance in what they had. And I thought to myself, seeing them still living their lives and grabbing those beautiful moments out of life and still being beautifully kind-hearted and still being amazing people and still working and doing all the things they're doing, putting out into the world, I always need to know whenever I'm going through that period of darkness, it will come to pass. And that is like the best sort of nugget I can give people, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Chills.
Everybody, round of applause, please. Everybody, round of applause. Where can people follow you? Please. Follow your journey, follow your story, follow the work that you are doing.
So I'm at Leanne Pero Official on Instagram, and then there's Black Women Rising UK as well. And yeah, that's where you'll find me. I'm not on TikTok and all that stuff, guys. I really...
I was expecting a couple dance videos from Leanne. You know?
Maybe at the 25th anniversary next year, I might dance again. Put the dancing shoes back
You
in.
heard it here first, guys. You heard it here first.
But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. Instagram. I'm looking to branch out a little bit this year, just now that I've got a bit more time on my hands, to do a bit more. But at the moment, Instagram is my place that I kind of share a lot of stuff. And I do a lot of workshops, there's a lot of wellness programs and stuff. I do a lot of stuff around mindfulness as well. I've created, kind of use my experiences like with my dance social enterprise and my work with Black Women Rising to kind of create my own sort of mental health space as well now for everybody rather than just cancer patients or just dancers. So yeah, there's lots of ways people can sort of, you know, sort of follow my journey and stuff.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, where do we go?
We ain't got nothing left for you.
The awareness, the information that you've shared, your own journey and your vulnerability. Thank you so much. Like, we never take for granted the fact that people come onto this couch and they share so much of their life, and we appreciate you as a sister, as a woman, as a survivor, as someone who's doing so much for women as well. And we really do pray that, like, not only does the work you do grow, but also you continue to grow so beautifully as a person. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We are rocking with you as a sisterhood.
Honestly, got us now.
No, got us
now.
I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah, for real, honestly. For real. And we don't take that lightly. And yeah, we just pray, like, invite us to your 40th birthday, girl. We need to.
We're coming already.
Yes.
But yeah, better is ahead, and it all works out really well for you.
Thank you so much, girls. Honestly, beautiful.
Well, follow the sisterhood.
Follow us and all that jazz. You already know where to find us, folks. You can follow us on all of our social media handles. Sorry, I'm so discombobulated and so moved by how wonderful this conversation has been. But we are available on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of those social media profiles. You can find us over at To My Sisterhood. And of course, you can follow us all individually. You can follow my wonderful co-host to the left of us at CD Boateng.
Yes, me.
And you can follow me over at Renee Kapuku.
And of course, make sure that you sign sign up to our mailing list, head to tomysisters.com, put in your email, we'll send you weekly love notes as well as further resources you may need after this episode. There are always helpful links in the description as well if you feel like you need some extra support, so check that out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and we will talk to you in our next episode. And as always, keep glowing and growing. Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, that was so amazing.
You did
girls.
phenomenally.
Jeez.
Thank you.
That was crazily beautiful.